Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter, here to paint one of the most requested things from my sketchbook. If you could all do me a favor in the chat and let me know if you could see my angel here and hear me clearly, that would be fantastic. Since I am working here in my studio alone, I have a bunch of wonderful moderators, though, in the chat that will help you out if you have any questions. And at the end of the broadcast today, I will take questions and do a Q&A session at the end. So just because it's really difficult for me to keep an eye on the chat and then try to create at the same time. In the video description, you will see a link to the reference photo, and this is a reference photo that I used. I printed it out here so I could kind of have it on screen. Also, it's from my copyright-free or royalty-free website called Pixabay, and you can download this photo for free as well. All right, thank you, Ian, for telling me it sounds and looks good on your end. All right, we're going to jump right in, and what I'm going to do is actually just grab a new sheet of watercolor paper. That was done in my sketchbook with Aquafine paper. This is Fabriano Studio paper I'm using in this sketchbook. And I'm going to try to situate everything so you can see everything on the screen. I'm going to sketch with a regular pencil. And the reason I'm going to do this is so I can erase if I need to. If you feel confident to go in with your markers, you can. But I like to put some guidelines as I'm drawing. So I'm going to start with an oval, slightly tilted for the face. And I can just gently erase. I'm drawing really lightly so I can erase any lines that I need to. My pencil doesn't want to stay out. There we go. This doesn't want to work. I'm going to have to go in with a colored pencil, but that's all right. I'm going to put a line across the middle for the eyes. I'm going to put a line down the center to kind of line up my features so I can have my nose centered and the mouth centered. And then I'm also going to do another line kind of under my eye line, just so I could get kind of a line for the bottom of the eyes. And then I can do a line above for like eyebrows. I'm going to do a line in between the bottom eye line and the chin for the nose. And then I'm going to do one more for the mouth in between the nose line and the chin. And that's how I like to get my faces kind of started out. And my pencil, of course, is giving me a technical difficulty, so we'll see how much I can sketch with this, and otherwise I'm going to have to go in with the markers, but that'll be all right. As long as I have these basic lines down, then I feel pretty good. So I just want to get this arch above the eye first, so I'm going to do that on both sides because they have a pretty pronounced eyebrow line. I'm just going to get a slightly curved line for the bottom of the nose, and then just the two nostrils there. And then this line here, I'm just going to get the line that separates the bottom and top lip. And your eyes are going to be one eye width apart generally, so I just want to kind of get them just roughed in there. So I'll get one eye width apart is approximately there. And I find that by putting the top and bottom marks, it's a lot easier for me to line up my eyes. And that's really all I need to begin with my markers. I'm going to start off with this really dark purple one, and you can use whatever water-based markers you want to. I do recommend having like a little piece of plastic or a dish or something that you can kind of squeeze your markers out onto while you're working. If you need to, maybe you want to test them. Like if I want to start that off, I want to make sure it's flowing, but I don't want to squeeze it over my paper and get a big blob. So so I do that like on my palette, and then if I need a lighter color, I can pick it up with a watercolor brush or just a water brush, and I can go from there. So I'm just going to go right in and put my darkest areas on my paper. These are the Jane Davenport Mermaid markers, and I'm really having a great time playing with these. And what I'm doing is, I'm looking for the deepest values because I'm using my darkest color, which is purple, and I also want to get my deepest values down at the same time. And I've got the hair coming up. The hair is giving a nice dark shadow on the face in certain areas. So I'm almost looking at my picture abstractly, and I'm saying, okay, where do I see the darkest areas? And that's where I'm putting in my my dark purple. And for those of you watching live on, what is it, February 1st, there will be 2 more live streams today if you want to catch them live. Those replays will not be available until next week, so I just wanted to give you a heads up if you wanted to kind of have a little time to hang out and chat, because I will not be doing any live streams next week. So I wanted to get a few recorded so I could post them up. Get a nice bigger shadow here. I'm not even looking, am I doing a face? I'm not even concerning myself with that. I'm concerning myself with the shapes that I'm seeing. And I think that's where people get a little weirded out or get a little scared when they're doing a face, is they're saying, well, I have to make this look like a face. So you just need to draw what you see. A little bit of an ear back here. Don't see much of it. The neck. And we're just going to have an indication of the wings, so we don't need to see all of that in there. Shadow under the bottom lip. And the statue is pretty heavy eyelids, so we're going to want to get those in there too. I like to put my darkest values in first a lot of times, just because I think that that's kind of the scarier parts to do. And if you get it out of the way right off the bat, it's not as difficult. And also always be lining things up. Like if I know that I have an ear over here, but I'm also going to look at my photo, but I'm also going to compare it to what I have over there, because it's probably more important that I make it match what I have on the other side of the face than I have it match the photo. If I have an error on that side, I'd probably rather repeat the error over here if I've done it in something permanent like this than have something accurate over here that doesn't match what's over there. And then I'm looking at this negative space right here, the space between the hair and the wing, and I can see that the wing is coming up just right like that. Okay, so always be checking against other things in your illustration. Like this one, the other wing doesn't even come out until way over there, or even a little further. But I did want that in there just so I could kind of make a note of that, and so it would make it clear that this is a stone angel. The fabric folds there a little bit. One of the neat things about these markers and about most water-based markers is that you'll see that they react very interestingly with water. So when we go in with like a water brush, we're going to get some really cool effects. Now it's really shadowy in this hair back here. I do want to bring that cheek line up a little bit so it doesn't look like the face is really wide there. And we do have some shadow just cast on the neck from the just from the head, but I don't want to put too much of that down yet, just in case it looks a little odd when we get, when we start adding our shading. All right, now something that I should have done before I started inking, but I didn't, was erase some of these lines I didn't need. So I'm just going to gently go in there. You could dry your marker first. I'm just going to be careful not to touch any of the marker because that's probably still a little wet. I just want to get any big lines where I know I'm going to have a lighter area just gone. There, and I don't want to brush it off with my hands or a brush because then I would smear it. Okay, so now I'm just going to grab a water brush. You don't have to use a water brush. You can use just a regular old brush and water. And I'm going to blend out some of these shadows and see kind of what I get. It's blending out really nicely. It can be very hard to do the part under the nose because it can look really awkward, but you have so much, more stuff you're going to be doing around here, so don't worry about that so much. I'm surprised how this purple doesn't really stain the paper all that much. You'll want to have a rag handy so that you can blot your marker off as you're working too. It's funny how the bottom of the nose is actually very straight across the shadow on the nose. So I'll have to go back in and add some more definition there. And we are going to have the hot mess stage, so don't worry. There's going to be parts of this that's going to look really awful before we're done. So I look at my, I'm just going to scoot this over so you can see. So I look at where my dark edge is and where it's blending out. And so this is blending out into the cheek. So that's why I'm wetting that area and letting it blend over. And I'm going to ignore the phone because I don't think it's going to be that important. So pardon the ringing for a few minutes. I have a feeling I know who it is too. So I'm just going to let it ring. And I do have an answering machine, so it will pick up eventually. There we go. I'm going to bring this shadow over a bit so we can fade that out. So the shadow on the face is kind of coming down like this. And it's going down right till about the collarbone. And there's my cell phone. Yes, I know exactly who that is, and that can ring. And I'm going to get a little bit of the shadow in there. I want to soften that up a little bit. I feel like I want to maybe remove a little bit of that color in there. And I'm going to bring out a little bit of this color here. And this purple is probably the most difficult because you do have to do so much structure with this. That's where you're getting a lot of the structure for the design. And get a lot of the, you're getting all the shadows here. So once you've got this in, it really becomes quite easy to do the rest of the piece. And if you don't have a water brush, just dip your brush in regular water. Right now, we're more concerned with value. Actually, whenever you're sketching or doing anything like that, your value is more important than the colors. You could do this in whatever colors you wanted to, as long as you have your values correct. Let's get that little shadow in the eye itself. This is looking seriously creepy now. We're definitely have that creepy Doctor Who angel vibe going. Okay, so let that sit for a second. And please feel free to chat amongst yourselves in the chat, and I will answer questions after the broadcast. All right, I am going to dry this really quickly with the heat tool before I go on to another color, because I do want to set that up a little bit, because I'm getting like some of my features are getting kind of soft with the water. So by just drying it, it allows me to add more layers. I will be able to go in and lift some of that up if I want to, but for right now, I just want to kind of get that dried and let that kind of fix itself to the paper a little bit. There will be some staining if I was to scrub in any of these areas to remove it back to white, but that's not going to bother me because I'm just trying to kind of get the values in at this point. Okay, so now for the mid-range, I'm going to go in more with a pink. And again, I'm going to start it on my palette here. Just give it a little squeeze to make sure the ink is flowing. And I think I'll probably keep my water brush in one hand and my my other brush in the other, and I'll just kind of go in, add a little color and spread it around, because you can see how intense that color is. That's actually way darker than I intended. So I'm just going to kind of spread that around a bit. And if you do get way more than you want, then just kind of blot it. And you can spray it and lighten up some areas. And then we'll splatter water on at the end, which will give us kind of like this water droplet effect. I'll show you here how these little light colored water droplets that you can get by flicking water on at the end. Now, I really think that color is a little too strong to go in right with a marker. It's just way too strong. And I think I'm just going to grab a watercolor brush that holds quite a bit of water to help me cover more area quickly and also kind of tone that down. Now I'm kind of wondering, maybe I didn't use this bright color. I might use the other pink because I did this picture a couple of weeks ago, but I don't want to go to the other pink now because I've already put it in there. So that's what you do. I mean, that's, I think part of the goal of a tutorial is to kind of teach you what to do if you get yourself in a situation where things don't go the way you had originally planned. So that's what I'm going to do here. Some of that in the hair as well. And my lightest value is going to be yellow. I also think I want to get some color in the background with flicking here. And let me get some of this yellow in here while I'm at it, while everything's still wet. And I can integrate it really easily. I like the water brush, but sometimes I need to go in. I need to cover more ground while it's still wet. So I go in with the watercolor brush because it's larger and more absorbent. And I also want to flick some of that color on there. So I am going to squeeze some onto my palette. And I can also wet some areas and let that color float around. And there was another pretty color that I liked to use in this piece, and it was kind of like a turquoise. It's this kind of Bahama Bay color. And let me just get it flowing here a little bit. And then I can add it to parts of my illustration. And this was kind of funny because this was one of those pictures where I'd be like, oh, I love the way this looks. And it's like, oh, I just messed it up. And I kind of went back and forth between, oh, I love the way this looks. And oh, what did I do there? You know, so that's how a lot of work in my sketchbook goes, because I'm not worried about what I'm creating. So you're kind of getting a little glimpse of that, of how I work in my sketchbook. I think a lot of people put this pressure on themselves that it's got to be perfect. But when you're working in a sketchbook, honestly, it could be a hot mess. Nobody ever has to see it. So keep that in mind when you're working. You shouldn't feel like you've got something to prove to somebody. If I can show you this hot mess stage, you know, live on YouTube, then you can work in a sketchbook without anybody judging you or worrying about anybody judging you. I'm reinforcing that shadow on the neck there. I love what my pigments are doing there. I think that's really a fun effect. And honestly, it reminds me of how statues kind of get that mossiness and lichen on them as they age. Like as you've got statues in the cemetery or monuments, they just kind of get that weathering to them. And I like having the colors kind of bleed out into the background too. Yes, Joey, this is my last push. I'm taking a week off, and so I am doing this big live stream marathon today. With the next video will be on sketching a face, like doing face proportions using tritone pencils, and then we'll do a skin tone mixing video. So yeah, a bunch of the things that have been requested from my sketchbooks, basically, I'm doing today. Okay, I'm really liking how the colors are melding here, but they are a bit dark. So what I do when I got my colors, it's like, well, that's just a little too dark. I want to lighten up some areas, and this is going to be a little freaky, but I'm just going to spritz it anywhere I want to lighten it up. And then I can go in with my paper towel and blot. Never rub, especially if you're using like a student grade paper, because it will pill the paper. It'll damage the surface. And what I really like about this, and this is the same technique I did in the pineapple drawing is it kind of takes off some of the excess ink, and then you get to see the staining underneath, which has a really, really cool look, I think. So at this point, I think I want a little more color in the background, and then I'm going to dry it, and we're going to go in with some colored pencils, and that way we can kind of retain, bring back some of the structure that we need in the sketch. I'm going to get that little bit of a wing, the feather indication on the wings. It's not going to be real sharp because our paper is wet, but it'll give me just that little bit of indication I need. And I also think kind of this like swishy, wet, drippy background almost looks kind of rainy. And I think that's a nice effect with the angels here. I love to flick colors onto other colors. I think it's a really fun effect and gives us a really nice texture. And really this becomes the background, and then we start adding detail on top of it. I like flipped marker in my cup of coffee. That's awful. I don't know if you can see that, but there's like these puddles of purple on top. I guess I won't drink any more of that coffee. I don't know if these markers are non-toxic or not. I am going to peek at the chat while I'm drawing this, so if I see any questions fly by, then I will answer them. Kim B, thank you very much. She said she wants my sketchbook. Well, maybe not my, she could be talking to somebody else, I suppose, in the chat. I'm totally just taking everything out of context right now. The hair dryer I'm using, this isn't a hair dryer. You totally can use a hair dryer, but this is a Ranger heated craft tool. It's a heat tool. It's meant for like if you rubber stamp to do heat embossing, but I really like it because it's quiet and it dries a lot quicker than a hair dryer. I would not recommend using this for other types of paint, such as acrylic, because it could bubble the paint, but for watercolor and ink, it works really great. Rebecca Corvo wanted to ask if you use any brush to blend. Oh, shoot. Well, I was using the water brush to blend. It kind of that question flew past me, and I have used just a regular watercolor brush. Flower Bug says we're going to have to start making flavored paint for when it goes into our coffee or tea. Well, I don't think they want to encourage us eating their paint. Yes, you can use regular watercolor Vindohini. That's absolutely fine. It might not be as bright as this because these are dye-based inks, but totally go for it. You could even use your kids' markers. Alex, I would say these are dyes. These are dye ink. These are more ink than watercolor. And actually probably most of your markers are. Little tip, if you dry the back side of your paper while you're working, especially in a sketchbook, it helps it lay flatter. Jamie says, when I flick water on my paintings, it sits on the top of the paper and doesn't absorb. Is this my paper? Well, watercolor paper it has sizing in it. It's going to keep it on the top of your paper. It will absorb a little bit, but it won't completely absorb. You'll just kind of have to let it dry. But that's pretty typical. Now, I want to encourage some more water spots, so I'm actually going to go back in and flick just plain water on here. Because I like that kind of decayed look that it gives. So to do this, you want to flick it on. And you want to let it set for a second, okay? And then it's going to reconstitute the ink underneath, and then we'll be able to blot it up. So you can kind of experiment and see how long you need yours to set before you blot it. So I might like kind of test over here, and I got a pretty nice water spot there. Yeah, I'm getting some really nice water spots. The longer you let it sit, the more dramatic effect you'll get, but I'm really loving just about this, like probably 15-second kind of absorption. I just love that texture. I think that's what made me fall in love with these markers. I've been really crazy about using them. I feel like I want a few more bigger spots, but you can see as it takes off one layer of the paint and it leaves a stain behind. So I just think it's kind of cool, kind of like distress markers, or I'm sorry, distress inks. In fact, you probably could use like your distress markers, any of your water-based markers. The Tombow markers do tend to not lift back up, but most other ones will give you a very similar effect. And I think for refilling these pens when they're used up, I'm just going to use my like Blick Studio liquid watercolor. I have a bunch of that on hand because I use it for my kids' classes that I teach at the library. Oh yeah, I'm just in love with that texture. Okay, we're going to do one more dry. We'll only take a second, and then we're going to go in with some colored pencils. And I've chose a few colors that I know I used in my sketchbook. I've got Prismacolors here. I have kind of this hot pink color. It's called Neon Red. I've got Apple Green. I've got Deco Aqua, which I'm not sure if that's still a color they make, but it's just a really, really pale aqua. Goldenrod, a Carnation Pink, white, and I have this last one's turquoise color. I'm trying to see it. Aquamarine. So you basically want colors that are within the same family realm of the colors that we've already used, but you want them to be able to stand out a little bit. I might also want to grab like a deep purple color. Or I can always go back in with that purple pen too. So I don't have to. That's pretty dark on its own. All right, so now we're going to go in and do some details. And I think I'm going to start off with some of my highlights, and I'm going right in with my white. And I'm going to hit the eyelid. The eyelid is very, very bright. So I start off with my sketch. I'm doing my darkest colors. And now as I am refining, I'm going in with my lightest colors. So I tend to like to work in contrast. I like to kind of get those contrasts right off the bat. You don't have to do that. You can definitely have a much more easy does it approach. You can go in a much more subtle way. I just find I'm a little quicker that way. And where this is a tutorial, I want to be pretty decisive. I also want to get nice expressive lines in here. So I'm kind of hitting my lightest spots. Now, what I have found is that probably because of the watercolor paper and the pencil's going to skip a little bit on the watercolor paper, is that I can go back in with these pens and they'll stick a little bit on top of the watercolor. Kind of lost the ear there. I'm not sure if I'm going to necessarily need it back, but I just wanted to indicate it. And I just, with that line there, it's not super, super strong. Okay. Now I'm going to go in with my yellow, because that's kind of my my mid-tone. I think I might want a creamier yellow. That one's a little more transparent and brighter than I thought it was. So I'm gonna grab a cream. I've totally like just tossed my pencils back into my bin I have by my table, so I'm not as organized as I was. That's gonna be an after vacation chore. Organize my pencil case again. And I like to work very fast and sketchy, but you don't have to. Try to keep my hand out of the way. I do have to hold it fairly close because of the amount of pressure that I'm using. I do use a lot of pressure, and that gives me a darker line. I got the paint over pens also when I was shopping with the Jane for the Jane Davenport stuff, but I find that if I use them over something like this that is so that has a lot of concentrated ink on it, it does pick up the ink. So I typically am not using them that way, just because it kind of dirties up the tip, and then you have to scribble it off, and you waste the ink. But you totally could. I mean, it's just up to you. And I like that the color's so strong underneath that I don't have to worry too much about overdoing it, about covering it all up, because I know there's going to be plenty of color under there. Oh yeah, you can use colored pencils over paint. It's a fantastic technique. Now I kind of lost the wing here, so I definitely want to bring that out again. I don't want to spend too much time with one color, so I'm going to go in here with some of this pink. Now, if I was working on my sketchbook, I do work fast, but I probably would be taking a little bit more time just because I wouldn't be, worried about taking a ton of time. I think I do want a purple pencil though, because I think that would be really nice. Here's one. A little tip though, if you sharpen your pencil with a knife, you can like retain all of that lead. You don't waste as much. You won't have as much detail, but you won't waste so much. So that's kind of nice. Sometimes I need the detail, but often I just need the color, so I'll use a knife. And it does seem to be a little bit easier on your pencils, I found. I think the sharpener wants to break them a little bit more. Getting these shadows back in here. And I think the texture is kind of cool that is from the paper underneath. If you want a smoother texture, you can use hot press watercolor paper, or you could use mixed media pad. I really like the Canson XL mixed media pad. It's very inexpensive and it just performs really well. And I know that AC Moore has it for like, I think it's like $5.88 for a 9x12. That's the size I use. It. Tremendous value, I think. And there, get some of those feather shapes. Okay, and I also want to get a little bit of that eye in there. There isn't a lot of indication, because it's all, you got to figure, a stone statue is all the same color. So I just want to kind of get a very light indication of that. Okay, now I haven't used any turquoise yet, and I like that, so I think I want to get some of that maybe in the robes that she's wearing. Maybe a little bit in the hair. You think of stone, think of like these thick ropes of hair. It's kind of just very, very thick. Maybe back in there with a little bit of the yellow. I am totally planning on some beach paintings when I get back, Delilah. And I like seeing that texture underneath, so I don't want to cover up anything completely. Don't spend too long on any one color with your pencils. Skip around. Pay attention to the values that you're trying to get. And I think I'm going to go ahead and grab that purple. Actually, I want more of that turquoise in there. I really like that. So I'm going to go right on top with some of this color. I think I'm just going to place a little bit down and then spread it with a water brush because these markers are very juicy. And I don't want to put a ton of ink and then have to blot it off. I mean, if I blot, I do like the effect of blotting it off, but I also like conserving my ink. I've used these a lot and I don't feel like I've used up that much of them, so it's kind of cool. I do recommend if you're getting them to use a coupon though, because they are a little bit on the pricey side. These were regular price on these is like $39, and they often have coupons for like 40% off or 50% off, or a certain percent off your entire purchase. So I'd always call ahead too, because these have been very difficult to find. These are the Aquash brushes by Pentel. I hadn't used them before, and the Spin Doctor sent me a couple of them to try out. He sent me a bunch of British art supplies too. There'll be a unboxing of that on the channel in a couple of days. I've been very busy. I've got all kinds of cool stuff to post while I'm on vacation, so hopefully find that enjoyable. If you do something to one area of the painting, I recommend you do it elsewhere as well. Keep some lines defined and then makes other lines softer. So just to give the texture of the feathers in the wing. And it's totally up to you whenever you think it's done. You don't have to do as much as I'm doing. You could do more than I'm doing. It's completely up to you. I feel like I want to go in with the purple just to give it some final lines. When you do the purple, just make sure you're kind of putting that where you really want the emphasis, because that is your darkest value, and that's really going to show. And just make sure those lines that you do in purple are accurate. Deepen up any of those areas you feel like just don't have enough shadow. If you look at your reference photo, pick out the darkest areas, and that's a good place to use the purple. I got a little too much there, so I'm just going to try to spread it out a little bit. But that's how it goes. I mean, you don't, when you're working in your sketchbook, you often have little oopses, and learning how to get around them is you can learn. Now, a trick that I do is I'll flip my work upside down, and I can tell pretty instantly if I have any problems. And if I do need to correct something, I can do that. Where I went a little too far in with my purple, I flattened out the cheek on this side. So I'm going to use this Maxine's mop, which is my favorite little lifty, scrubby brush, and I'm going to round that cheek out again. And when I look at it upside down, instead of seeing a face, I just see an object. And it helps me objectively look at it. Lighten that up just a wee bit more, just so I can get that light in there. Now, this is a student paper. It's not going to take the abuse of other papers, but it allowed me to bring back a little bit of lightness there. Grab a little bit of that turquoise and add that into that area too. I think one of the most important things of being an artist is learning how to cover your tracks when you make a mistake. So if you do have questions, kind of have them ready, because I'm just about done here, and I will take questions in the live chat. And you may need to repost them in. I don't know if I'll be able to go back in the chat to get them once I start over there. I think I'm gonna hit this with water with the dryer one more time and then see if there's anything else I want to add with the colored pencil. And I'm going to take a peek over at the chat, see if anybody has posted anything. Oh, there, that's better, much lighter. The longer you let that water sit, the more you can blot it back to the original colors. And I'll show you my original one has way more yellow in it. And I really like that. So it's funny, you could approach the same painting a couple times and get completely different results depending on what colors you choose and what mood you're in that day. In fact, I think I do want to go in with some more yellow because I really like that effect, especially in the hair. And I like how it skips around a little bit. It'll stick on some pencil. It'll go next to some pencil. And there was another color that I had used. I think it might have been this pink or this pink. I think it was this one. I don't think it was a skin tone one. It was just a much warmer pink in that, because that original pink I had was really cool. Might add that in a few places just to kind of warm things up a bit and then spread it out with a wet brush. It's funny because different colors will stain differently. Some stain a lot, some stain a little. And you really don't know what you've got until you try it on your paper. I have a few more flicks of water so I can pull up some interesting water drops. So I'm really loving that effect on this paper. Question, thought Lindsay was going on vacation. Yes, Rhonda, I am. This is my final, mega work day before I go. So I thought I would get a little more work done. All right, we'll dry it. Do one more pass with the colored pencils, and this will be done. A little crooked there. There we go. Question, is this possible to do with Crayola markers? Could you, oh, sorry, went too fast, but yes, you can do it with Crayola markers. Question, why does this one look so different from the one on the email alert? Well, because I'm painting it on different paper and it's a different day, I guess. This is the one from the email. Just the colors were slightly different, slightly larger piece of paper. Same techniques though. All right, so I'm going in with some white. I just want to get some of my bigger highlights back, getting these big highlights back in here. Going into my white first so I can establish that brightest value. I'm going to sharpen this a bit because I am down to the end there. Well, maybe I'm not because I don't see my sharpener right off the bat. And a little bit of highlight here on the edge of the nose. We get a strong highlight there. And I'm going to go into this cream color. I like this cream color. This is called Jasmine. Actually, this is a really nice color in the Prismacolor markers as well. If you like to use alcohol markers, this is an excellent color to use in skin tones. It's such a warm, sunny color. It's great for just hitting like just a highlight on a skin tone. One of my favorite colors. Eggshell's another really good. Jasmine and eggshell are good for blending in skin tones. Like your highlights, or most of your skin tones if you're doing Caucasian skin, but even for blending out to highlights on darker skin tones as well. All right, I think that highlighting is helping quite a bit. I like that with colored pencils you get like a second chance kind of. I'll be back to look at the questions in just a moment. Just want to get this portion of, just finish up the tutorial part before I do that, so folks watching the replay aren't bored out of their gourd. So somebody asked the other day about how do you take something that's kind of pretty much monochrome and convert it to something with lots of colors. And the easiest way I can explain it is just basically assigning a value to each color. So purple was my darkest value. So any place I had the really dark colors, I use purple as my color, like this little separation in between the lips I'm doing with this dark purple, and I did with the purple pen. And then like my highlights would be like the yellow, midtones would be like the turquoise and the pink. So I try to find colors that are very similar in value, and that way you can take those monochromes, because a lot of times I think it's easier to work from a monochrome picture than a colored picture, because you can you already have your values established. And I think more people, when a picture looks off, it's because the values are off. The colors can be whatever colors you want. You just want to get those values correct. Any big shadows in the hair I can do with this too. I find I'm liking my Prismacolors more and more the more I use them. I'm having less breakage issues too for some reason. Maybe because they're up here where it's warmer. Maybe the lids fuse back together or something. I don't know. And I like this color too. So sometimes I'll say, have a color that I like, and I'm like, I like that. I want that in a couple more places just because it's a color I enjoy. And you can also bring back the roundness if you lost some roundness in the cheeks. All right, I think I'm going to end this before I get too carried away. And there we have our stone statue. It's a little bit darker than the one I did the other day, but probably just because I was in a different mood. I did less colored pencil on this one the other day, but well, it's funny, get in a different mood, you're going to do it a little differently, I think. So I'm going to look in the chat, see if there are any questions right now. And then at 11 o'clock, we will do another portrait tutorial. So I hope that you come back for that. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions yet. I'm going to try to scroll back a little bit, so bear with me. Okay. Question. I ordered the White Nice watercolors and they arrived in the mail yesterday. In my excitement, I took off all the wrapping and now I don't know the color names. Any advice? Oh yeah, that's tricky. I would swatch them out and try to find a chart online or chart on your box and figure out what you have. You should have a list of colors on the box or wherever you bought them. Go back to that website and write down the colors you have and see if you can match them up. You could probably also write to the company for a hand-painted color chart. If they can send you one of those, you'd be able to match them up a lot better. That would be my advice. Question, are the markers, oh shoot, it went past it. Sorry. Let's see. Question, what mood were you in today? Well, I'm probably in a like hurried mood, I guess. Question, do you recommend that I take proper lessons for painting or can I improve my techniques by myself? You can definitely do either. I think it just depends on what you have access to, what your budget is, and what your schedule is like. I mean, you might be able to grow a little faster with some lessons, but nowadays there's so much online for free where you can learn, and there's so many classes that you can pay to take that you can actually work on your own, but take a lesson online and kind of have the best of both worlds. Question, are the Mermaid markers waterproof when dry or do they lift? Ian, they will lift. Remember how we're getting the water spots? And all these, I flicked water and blotted them. They will definitely lift. They'll stain a bit, but they will lift. Question, what are some great but cheap paints? For watercolor, I like the Grumbacher Academy, Van Gogh, Sonnet. Cotman. Those are all decent brands that are inexpensive. The Jane Davenport ones, Prima, Sandra. So hurried equal darker colors. I don't know. It could also be the paper. Just the paper might be grabbing the color a little bit more than the Aquafine, because this is Aquafine and this is Fabriano. And I think I might have also gone in a couple times and sprayed it and blotted it when I did the first one. Oh yeah, Da Vinci, Lucas, Cotman, those are all good. Any other questions, guys? I'm going to scroll down in case I've missed any. Hurried equals intense. Yeah, really, Carmen. Okay, guys. Well, we got another live show in 10 minutes, so I am going to cut this to the end. I want to thank you all for watching, and please leave a thumbs up before you go. And the link for the other 2 live streams today is on my channel, so if you just click my name, it'll take you to my channel, and you can access either of those other live streams. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting.